14-year-old boy has lost a court case that he brought against his own parents after they moved him from London to a boarding school in Ghana. The boy had argued that his parents tricked him into going to the school. They said they feared he'd be drawn into criminal activity in London. Sancho Berg reports.
I'm really struggling in Ghana. I hate it here. There's no other way to describe this, but I feel like I'm living in hell.
Last summer, a 13-year-old boy sent a desperate email to the British High Commission in Accra.
Last half term, my parents left me in Ghana by myself in a boarding school. I'm from London, England. I'm begging to go back to my old school. Please help me.
The boy then contacted a charity who helped him instruct lawyers. They asked the High Court to order him back to Britain. He'd left the school but stayed in Africa. The boy has lived in London with his originally Ghanaian family since he was born. His parents told the court they had tricked him into going to Africa because he was at risk. They were worried in London he was being drawn into criminal, possibly gang activity. The judge agreed with the parents and rejected the boy's request. He said the teenager was at risk of suffering greater harm in London than if he stayed in Ghana. He described this as a sobering and rather depressing conclusion.
Hi there. So the 14-year-old who took his parents to court because they moved him from London to Ghana to a boarding school has lost his case. And the judge in his ruling said he was satisfied that the parents' wish for their son to move to Ghana was driven by their deep, obvious and unconditional love. The boy was at risk of suffering greater harm returning to the UK, the judge said. He said the boy's parents believe, and in my judgment with reason, that their son has at least peripheral involvement with gang culture and has exhibited an unhealthy interest in knives. The boy's father told the judge the couple did not want their son to be yet another black teenager stabbed to death in the streets of London. Bravo. I'm glad the court saw it fit to trust in the judgment of the parents in raising their child. This has been a problem, a perennial issue.
Ebusuya me ma akwaba de ba justice media so na ebusuya mesre se video a hweye ene emu ensem ba ko mienu bi me bo ne tofa kakra na etimi edru ase ye pa ama ebi mu so etimi enya entiase e de afa ensem ya ekoso e wo UK mamu ya a efa Ghana ni abamu e ene na wofu e ho ebusuya me de mani edi asemi achi kakra ye pa na de mehu e wo ho ne se abofrei oye 14 years na one na wofo ana ete e wo UK eman mu na in fact abofrei ababeye ahomaso kakra e wo efie ama ode ne ho abobo enamfofo bi a otimu se sa enamfofo no omo enye enamfo papa da bia abofrei awofo ehu se abofrei ekeka akono wanhwe ya e asem kese pa na ebebre wo mo na wanhwe yi nso e asem kese pa ana ebebre abofra no omo a abofrei ede ne ho abowo mo eye omo a omo abrabo enhyeda emfa ekwan papa so ene ade awofo ehu se da bia abofrei ekeka akọ eho eye trunti no omo eteki decision se da bi omo di abofrei ebeba o my Ghana mu na abofrei aba boarding school ewo Ghana ha sei na omo di abofrei eba Ghana ha bre omo ebusuafo Ghana ha di abofrei koto boarding school a onim se omo nim se Ghana ana ye o my papa se omo di abofrei ba abofrei betumi enya entity ya papa ebebo akola idachi na omo nso ebebo awo ebusuafo omo ema akorei so ede no ba Ghana ha sei ebetu sukuru mu ebusua abofrei ehun se da bi na wofo adada no ede no efra brochimemu abeto Ghana ha sei boarding school mu no omasan so agya no hokọ no abofra no chance se obia research ewo online na okohu some orphanage bia akola chance se obia logic complain ede ama sa orphanage no ekwan ya na wofo afaso abeto no atwene o my Ghana mu ebusuafo sa orphanage enso etu anamon eyo madwen se da bi ombebo epini abofrei awofo akoye ehwehwemu ba ko mienu bi ahwese de abofrei eken eyo no krana se de orphanage no emu empanimfo etu anamon ekọ abofra na awofo ko hwe ensem na chese de abofra na eka no eyo no kra enti no orphanage no ede case no court na busua court no bi no mmienu nyina yenim se abolichimam nso de anka ablofo enipa bi a se de omo epe enkwala asem na omo ani enso ege amofra ho no omo protect amofra yi pa enti no ebia anka omo betwitwa de age abofra yi ama abofra asamba back to UK na busuafo asem court no omo se there be decision na abofra no awofo ateki na omo de abofra no aba oman Ghana se omre sukuu wo Ghana hasi na onsan so emenya entity papa wo oman Ghana mu no e decision papa e ma asesi a abofra yi na awofo e di abofra yi so inkunim asesi a de abofra yi aka oman Ghana mu a oku sukuu hasi no mu a onsan so enam entity papa mu a e de abrabo papa ne dachi papa e bebre abofra yi ebusunya meni gisa decision ya abofra yi awofo eteki hu yi pa na nyame enhyira wo mu nyame nso enhyira saa kotofo wo so di asem no hu ze dabi Ghana man eye oman papa Ghana man eye oman fon enti no hono mo di abofra na kon abofra ne benya ntete papa abofra no ebenyi abepeni papa ama na awofo nso nya no so mfa so ebusuafo meni agi decision ya abofra awofo eteki yi pa ehu yi pa na ebusuya meka ene esi mu asem so se esanse oman Ghana eye oman papa esanse oman Ghana entity papa ewom na enye oman fonti no ebusuya abrofui senka oman Ghana yo oman fo a nyade anka abrofo mbeti ase da se yenkotete abofrei ewo oman Ghana ebusuya Ghana ensensa me my Ghana oman papa pa na ebusuya na sese nyabotre na yentoa so enhwe videos ahodo a aka eka ho.
Can your child get a proper education if you live in West Africa? You may find after watching this video that the education system in West Africa is not only better than what you thought, but it might be a better environment for your children to learn than the Western world. So let's talk about it. Probably the number one reason that I hear in my appointments from Westerners who are hesitant to move to West Africa despite seeing all the benefits of living in the region is that they are concerned about their children's education. Often they'll say they are very interested in buying a property, but they just want to wait until their kids are in college. But what if I told you that your children could get a more rigorous education in a structured environment where they would be more happy and be better prepared for success after graduation than if they were educated in the Western world? This is not hyperbole. I have genuinely found West African education to surpass the educational system in the West, particularly at the private academies, in terms of discipline, education level, fitness level, and the social network the kids develop. But before I get into this more, the reason I'm talking about private academies is because the typical Westerner who would pay $500,000 for a new construction home in Africa would typically send their kids to an academy. And that's my client base. But much of what I'm saying could apply to the standard schools in West Africa. Just ask any student who has transferred from an African school what they thought about public schools in America or Canada. Generally, they'll tell you that they got bored studying in the West because the classes were too simple. That is because the Western education system is highly bureaucratic, and in order to keep as many people happy as possible, they slow down the education process. But is that really setting up your kids for success? Compare that to education at a West African private academy. In West Africa, there is a greater emphasis on discipline, respect, and knowing the subject matter. There generally isn't extra credit or special consideration given to sports teams. The kids are there to learn. As a result, kids are graduating at a higher level in math and science than the typical Western educated student. The kids eat real food, unlike the Western world, where they often use the same companies that supply prison food to feed the school-aged children, despite it being this terrible processed food, and we wonder why childhood obesity is such a problem in the West. And if diversity is your concern, the private academies educate children from all over the world, from many different nationalities, races, and religious backgrounds. And although I hate this to be an issue, unlike the West, there really aren't safety concerns for students in West Africa. There's also no weird social agenda being pushed on the kids in West Africa. I don't want this video to get flagged, but you probably know what I'm talking about. But what about cost? Generally, the tuition at a good academy in West Africa will run between $2,500 and $3,500 a year. There are some high-end academies that cost over $20,000 a year, but a good rule of thumb is to budget $5,000 a year per child with all the expenses included. That may sound like a lot if your kids go to a a public school in the West, but think about what it costs to live in a good school zone. In the Washington, D.C. metro area, the difference in cost between a house in a good school zone and a struggling school zone is between $300,000 and $500,000, which with taxes would equate to almost a $3,500 a month additional mortgage payment. That's $42,000 additional dollars you'd pay every year for your kids to have the right to go to a non-failing school in Washington, D.C. So you can get a better education in West Africa at a lower cost where your kids will be safer and they'll be educated with the children of the African elite. And their diploma will be accepted by the elite colleges in America if that's something you are aiming for. For me, the pros are greater than any downsides, but I want to know what you guys think. Am I overestimating the quality of African education or underselling Western education? Would you be comfortable sending your kids to an elite African academy? Why or why not? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if this video provided value to you, give me a like and a follow. That really helps out my channel, and I will see you guys on the next video.